In 1960 and then since 1976, TV debates have provided an important focus for the presidential campaign for the making of the American president. They often generate some of the most memorable moments of an election campaign, but usually they don't seem to have very much impact on public opinion one way or another. But what happened in 1980 is perhaps an exception that proves the rule. If we go back to the election campaign of 1980, opinion polls suggest that this contest between Reagan and Carter was a lot closer than we tend to remember. Carter was an incredibly beleaguered president at home. There were economic travails, high unemployment, high inflation, an energy crisis. Overseas, there seemed to be intractable challenges in the Middle East and also in superpower relations with the Soviet Union. With the benefit of hindsight, Reagan was an incredibly talented politician able to take on Carter. But somehow, during the campaign of 1980, Reagan struggled to achieve a breakthrough against Carter. Despite all the problems that Carter faced, despite the climate of disenchantment with Carter, somehow for many Americans, Reagan wasn't a convincing answer to those problems. Maybe he was too old, maybe, as Carter tried to claim, he was too conservative, maybe even an extremist, too extreme to be trusted with the management of American foreign policy during the Cold War. That's certainly the message that the Carter campaign tried to develop against Reagan. And yet, something that seemed to make a difference was the debate on television between Reagan and Carter. There was just one TV debate between Reagan and Carter during the campaign, and it took place only a week before Election Day. At that time, when Carter and Reagan met for the debate, polls suggested that the campaign was very finely balanced between them. According to Gallup, Carter had the edge over Reagan, 45 to 42%. The Harris poll organization had the same numbers, 45 to 42, but they gave Reagan an edge over Carter. Reagan narrowly ahead of Carter, according to Harris, 45 by 42. That's how things stood when the two met for the debate. It's a debate that generated several of those memorable moments. All of them seemed to favor Reagan. First of all, during the debate, Carter mentioned that he'd asked his 13-year-old daughter, Amy, what she thought the most important issue of the campaign was. Her answer was control of nuclear arms. It's a comment that for many trivialized the issues. It's a comment that became a national joke. The New York Times had convened a panel of voters to watch the debate. When Carter made those comments, they erupted in laughter. Reagan, by contrast, made comments during the debate that memorably summarized his case against Carter on the economy and on foreign policy. Reagan asked voters who were watching, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" He talked about the cost of living. He talked about unemployment. Reagan also asked, "Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago?" He made his case against Carter in a memorable way. But it's perhaps 4 simple words that were the most memorable of all. There you go again. That's what Reagan said when Carter attacked his record. Reagan gently dismissed Carter's criticisms with the words, "There you go again." So during this debate, Reagan was much more successful than Carter in getting across his message. But maybe what was crucial in particular was Reagan's success in diffusing the negatives against him. Carter was claiming that Reagan was an extremist, and yet Reagan didn't look like an extremist. He didn't talk like an extremist. For many, he looked rather more presidential than the president himself did. A week after the debate, Americans went to the polls, and on Election Day, Americans gave victory to Reagan unexpectedly by a landslide in the popular vote. Reagan had a margin over Carter of 50.8% to 41.0%. John Anderson had 6.6%. This was an election in which polls suggest that an unusually large number of voters had been undecided until the very last stages of the campaign. A Gallup poll suggested that more than 1 in 3 voters made up their mind during the last week of the campaign for 1 in 10. This was on election day itself. And maybe that presidential debate that Reagan seemed to win quite effortlessly had changed things a little, may be enough to be decisive. If that's the case, it's something of an exception in the history of presidential debates. The debates always absorb lots of attention during a presidential campaign to become a central part of a campaign. It's not so common for them to change how voters see the candidates. Perhaps what happened in 1980 was enough to help Reagan achieve this victory, a victory that would be so consequential in American history.